Yes, so I was on the point where several things can contribute to people developing a negative mindset, and it could be our past experiences, whether it's experiences from our childhood that has been reinforced. And when I say reinforced, I mean like, I'll give an example later on in a short while, but past
Mm-hmm.
experiences or fears, these different things can contribute to us having a negative mindset. And let's just say, for instance, you have an experience where you didn't get the job that you wanted, and then that experience is reinforced but in a negative way. So we tend to, our brain tends to filter out all the positive because we have a negative mindset, and in filtering out that positive, the brain is looking for those negative experiences that reinforces what we're presently thinking. And
Yeah.
then we find ourselves stuck in that hole of where we always perceive a negative outcome or the worst possible outcome for our situation. Now, there's a
Mm-hmm.
key word that I use here, and it's perception. And I
Mm-hmm.
talk about perception in my book. I went deeply into perception. Now, there are two types of perception that I raised in my book Uncrushed. There's the emotional perceptive process, and there's the selective perceptive process. And when I talk about emotional perception is where, I'll give an example. There's a friend of mine who always hated breadfruit. And I'm like, I love breadfruit. When I was 16, I would eat a whole one roasted. You know, I was like, why
Yes,
you
I
hate breadfruit? To
remember.
me, that, yeah, I love breadfruit. But in conversations, having conversations with him, I recognized that whenever he thought of breadfruit or saw breadfruit, he always remembered his abusive mom, because as a child, he was always the one who was blamed for everything. And she usually cooked breadfruit plain in water. And he just always associated it with that. So that's an emotional perception, an emotional
Right.
response to that. Now, the selective perception, and forgive my example, this one is based on a true story, is when I lived in the camp in Trinidad at the time, we had an abusive neighbor who would hit his wife. And frequently you'd hear her crying and screaming. And you can hear him asking her, where's the money? Where's the money? And she'd be saying, but you used it already. You used it out. And the times when he behaved this way was when he would come home drunk, because the neighborhood knew him as an alcoholic. Now, the
Right.
selective perception here is where I'm sure this woman, God bless her soul, is she would have had friends. She would have had maybe a counselor or someone, or a pastor or someone who would have encouraged her maybe to leave him or to separate from him, or maybe to try to seek the best for herself and her children. But the selective perception is where she might tend to think, you know, he might change. He loves me
Right.
nonetheless. Um, or she has her own fears of living alone, fears of being alone and providing for my kids. And she chooses to select that particular response to the situation. And that keeps her trapped in the negativity. So we have to be careful, because what happens is when we have a negative mindset, that mindset will hinder us from achieving our goals in life, and any goal. And another point I want to raise for our viewers who are watching, you can be a seemingly positive person, but you can also have a negative mindset towards certain things or towards a certain aspect of your life. So say,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, you can find someone who is a positive person and they're doing well in the career, but they're overweight and they have a negative mindset with regards to the health aspect of their life. And you know, we have different life categories. So they're
Yes.
positive when it comes to their career, but really when it comes to the health aspect of their life, they have a negative mindset, and you can tell the mindset they have by the words they use. So how they
Okay. Can you
think,
give an example of a word they would probably use?
for instance, so someone with that who would have a negative mindset towards that health aspect of their life would say, you know, I can never lose weight. I've tried and tried again and nothing ever works. Oh, I hate
Right.
myself. I hate how I look, you know. And then we get into something I call the comparison test, and we're comparing ourselves to others. And then certain thought patterns begin to emerge because of our mindset. And I'll just call it, I just mentioned a few here, but I mentioned more in the book, where you compare yourself to others. Oh, look at Kim. Kim is so slim, or Kim looks
Mm-hmm.
exactly how I want to look. I can never look like that no matter what I try. I think it's in my genes. And all these are the negative thought patterns. Or you feel like you're never good enough, or you envisage the worst case scenario, you know. So we have to really be careful, because our negative mindset will keep us back from achieving the goals that we have in life. And like I have said, in any aspect of your life.
Would you say self-talk is a big part of that? Part
Yes.
of forming, those negative thinking thoughts and patterns?
Yes, and the great thing about self-talk is a part of reinforcing your negative thought pattern, but it can also be a key to making the changes you need to change. Because if you change your self-talk, you can actually change your thought pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And that I mentioned that also in my book as part of the RAP method. It's something that I have used in my own personal life without recognizing it. And I'll give an example. When I was a teenager, 12 years old, and when I started secondary school, I can remember I was in Form 1, and I said to myself, now this, as God is my witness, is the truth. But the beauty about it is that I did this as a teenager without recognizing it. And I said to myself, you know what? I want to graduate as the most outstanding student. I never
Mm-hmm.
said that to anyone, but I
Mm-hmm.
had it in my mind. So the RAP method emerged out of some of my experiences using this process where I reflected on what I wanted to achieve. And when you reflect on what you want to achieve, I present in my book, for those of you who want to get it, it's Uncrushed. I talk about the reflection cycle. When you reflect on what you want to achieve, you find your thoughts will align with that, your self-talk will align with that. So usually I will say things to myself. So I will set my short-term goals. I want to place first in class. I place third. The next time I'm going to place second. I'm going to study hard. Now, because you're reflecting and you're aligning your self-talk and you're visualizing your goals, you see yourself what you want, where you want to be. Your brain works with you to help you to achieve those goals. And how that happens is, and I'm sure many of us have heard of visualization. Even the sports athletes and those persons who have been successful in life have used visualization as a tool to achieving success. And the way it works is that it activates the reticular activating system in your brain. These are neurons in your brain that
Mm-hmm.
filters out certain things, and then it looks for information that pertains to what it is you want to achieve, and helps you. For instance, okay, let's say I'm visualizing, I want to have my own business. I want to own my own business, and I'm visualizing myself, the business that I want to achieve, and really going down into the details of it. Really see myself at my office, or coaching or helping an individual, and you practice visualizing it. Then what happens is, let's say next tomorrow or next week you were to get a call or an email or something. Your brain works with you in helping you to recognize the opportunity, because sometimes opportunities can come to us and it may not be as visible, but you recognize the opportunity because there is an alignment with your thought process, there is an alignment with your words, and then your brain works with you to help you to get to that point. Now, going back to the RAC method, that's just the reflection stage. You also have to aspire to achieve what you want to achieve. So if you have a negative mindset, one of the first steps is to be honest with yourself. And I begin my book with that by saying honesty is the first step to change. You have to be honest with yourself. And let's say it's your past, for instance. It's one of the things that have caused you to have a negative mindset. Like me, I was molested as a child at 8 years old. And because of that molestation, when we migrated from Trinidad to St. Lucia, I migrated my past as well. And I
Mm-hmm.
buried that so deep inside of my brain. And I thought that was the way to solve my problem. And let me say now, if you have anything in the past that's causing you pain, burying it is not the way to solve it, because eventually it always resurfaces in life, and then you find yourself with problems and you have to solve it then. So one of the first things I had to do is to acknowledge, accept that I needed to change, be honest with myself. That's the first thing that you need to do. And despite burying my past, and despite using the RAC method as a teenager to achieve the goals, which eventually I graduated as the most outstanding student. And I was
Mm-hmm.
surprised when I opened the booklet. It was a shock to me because I never said it to anyone. I'm like, wow, it really worked. And I shared other examples in the book. But despite all that, because I buried that pain, it affected my self-confidence. It affected my self-esteem, how I valued myself. And that's why I started off in the beginning by saying that you can have a positive mindset towards certain aspects of your life, but
Mm-hmm.
yet still in other areas, you have a totally negative mindset. And for me, mine was with my self-esteem, mine was with trusting men. And then you find I had to go through the healing process. So the first step, if you have a negative mindset, is being honest with yourself. And then using that RAC method, the reflection process, I have provided different examples and different questions, even a workbook to go along with the book, where you can go into the workbook and actually come up with those issues that is causing you the pain, or those issues, sorry, that are causing you to have the negative mindset. And then when you come up with those issues that are causing you to have the negative mindset, and you're honest with yourself, then you need to recognize. So for example, if it's the past, you have to look at your past as exactly that. Your past is your past. And how can you use that past so that you can get the positive, extract the positive from it, and use it to influence your future. And the thing with a negative mindset is that we use our past and we allow that past, or those fears, or those past failures, to influence us in a negative way, because we perceive a negative outcome. So it's very important why the second step is aspiration. You have to aspire to change. And as part of aspiring to change is getting out of that comfort zone. As part of aspiring to change is recognizing that whatever is causing me the pain, I have to deal with it. If it's an experience, I need to get healing. And in my book, I talk about spiritual healing and also doing things on the physical level, because spiritual alone is not enough. It's the two have to go hand in hand. Or whether it is failure that is causing you to have a negative mindset, because when you look back at your life, you recognize some of the things you wanted to achieve, you didn't achieve, and you feel like a failure. Really and truly, then it's time to change the lens with which you view failure. And I provide some questions you can use in my book where you can change how you view failure, because we can learn from our failure. And that's the most important thing. If you can learn from that failure and recognize it not as failure, but as an outcome. This is the outcome that I got from this experience. How can I change my outcomes? Because really and truly, that's what our life is about. Our life is about different outcomes. For instance, it might be at work. I aspire to get a promotion. That's an outcome I want. I want to get a promotion. I want to be better paid. Or you're single. The outcome I want to get married. Or you don't have kids. I want to have my first child. So what are the outcomes? How can I change my outcomes in life? So part of that process is that aspiration to change your outcomes, and then actually taking the steps to change. Now, taking the steps to make that change in the RAC method involves a number of things. And one of the first things we have to do is change how we perceive things. Perception is a choice that we make. And I go back to my example of the emotional and selective process that we have in viewing perception. Another point I want to use in viewing perception is this, Kadia. And when I shared this point, when my editor read my book, she personally called me. And she said, Melissa, I just had to call you because I had never viewed things this way. And before I explain it to your viewers, I want to use an example. So I was in the supermarket one day, and up here in the UK, there's a self-checkout process. So instead of taking the queue and going to the cashier, you can use a self-checkout. So I went with all my stuff in one of the small trolleys to the self-checkout. And there is a worker standing there, an employee, and she kept looking at me, and I'm like, for a minute I was like, why is she staring at me like that? I'm not going to steal anything. You know, immediately the negative thoughts want to come.
That's the first part.
Right. The first thought is always negative, right? And then interestingly, at the time of this particular experience I'm sharing, the reason why it's in the book is because I was writing the book at the time. So immediately I stopped myself, and I talk about that in my book, about arresting those negative thoughts. You arrest those thoughts. And I stopped myself right there. And I said, you know what? Melissa, she's doing her job. Just focus on what you're doing. So I packed everything and, used the machine, put in my money, and about to pack my bag. And she walked up to me, and here's what she said. I was wondering how you were going to pack all those things on the self-checkout. It's so organized, because I packed all bottles first, and then I put boxes here, and it was in such an organized way. She was wondering how I was going to manage with all that on the self-checkout. So the point I'm raising here with perception is this. When you don't have all the information, do not form assumptions or jump to conclusions. And a lot of times we find ourselves in situations of conflict, or we find ourselves in problems in life because we form assumptions and we jump to conclusions in with respect to the lack of information. Let me use another example. So this young lady and a guy, they're dating, and she's waiting on him. He's late, and she's waiting on him, whether it's at the restaurant or at the corner of a street somewhere, and she's beginning to get so angry. Even me at one time in my younger life, I used to hate to wait on guys.
I raised my hands to that.
Yes, but she's getting so angry, you know, and really, really upset. Or it could be her husband, for that matter. She's waiting on, and she's getting really upset, and she's beginning to boil and stir inside. And as soon as he arrives, sometimes what we do as women, or vice versa, we lash out. Oh, where were you? And we start with an argument. But, or sometimes we've made a decision before they arrived. And that decision is, hey, I'm sorry, I can't meet you anymore, or we cancel this date, or whatever the case is, we've made a decision. But the point I want to make is, we've made that decision in the absence of information. So we've made that decision in the absence of information. And sometimes the decision that we make is actually the wrong decision, because when the individual arrives, let's use an example of a husband. When he arrives, he says to his wife, hey, you know, actually I left work late, or I forgot the phone at home, or just as I was about to leave, and this has happened to me personally as well. That's the time when the baby says, my toddler says toilet. You are now ready to just take the keys and open the door, and he says toilet. And the worst thing is when my daughter, for instance, she's 5, and she says she wants to go to the toilet. It's a procession, because she has to sit and wait. Mommy, wait, it's coming, you know, and it's a whole 5-10 minutes you have to wait. So in many instances, we find ourselves in conflict, or we find ourselves being stirred up. And my point is, in order to maintain that positive mindset, part of maintaining a mindset is trying to be calm. And in the absence of information, choose to make a decision that will allow you to remain calm. So instead you could say, okay, and that's why I always work with a book. If something comes up, okay, I'm going to read my book. Hey, I get some time to put in, because I have so many books to read, to catch up on reading this book, or catch up on maybe playing a game on my phone. I haven't played Scrabbles for a long time, or maybe call a friend. When the person arrives, and this is just for example purposes, when the person arrives, they will let me know what has happened. My whole point is, as part of maintaining that positive mindset, we should aim, in the absence of information when situations like this arrive, to try to make decisions that allow us to remain calm.
Yeah.
I could go on, so.
I know. But all of the information so far is very interesting. So you mentioned your rack. So it was reflection, aspire, and what was the C for?
And change. Reflection, aspiration, and change. So you're reflecting on yourself, you're reflecting on your self-talk, because many of us, we talk negatively about ourselves, and oftentimes without realizing it. And sometimes it's someone who says that you always speak negative, and we don't realize it. Oh, I'm such a fool. You know, I try not to say that, especially since writing the book. I'm so stupid. You know, all these are words, because, and our words have power. And the Bible says it, words are life, and it couldn't be further from it. It is the truth. Words indeed have power. So you have to be careful of the words that you speak about upon yourself and about yourself. And if I want to leave your viewers with this today, is that reflect upon the words you speak upon yourself and the words you speak about yourself. Because when those words get out there, it's impacting your mindset. It's impacting your pattern of thinking, and sometimes without even recognizing it. So you reflect upon your words. You reflect upon your self-talk. You reflect upon the way you perceive things. So make a decision to perceive things in a way that you remain calm in the absence of information. Make a decision to perceive things in a way objectively. And that's why I provide a reflection cycle in the book, where you can go through and work through your issues and come up with actionable steps to solve that issue, but from an objective perspective. Because we tend, as individuals, it's only natural that we tend to think subjectively when we're making decisions. And sometimes that we end up making the wrong decision as a result. So you reflect upon your thoughts, you reflect upon about how you think about things, the words that you speak, you know, and you aspire for change. And as part of aspiring for change, you know, I talk about this, I think I called it the acceptance dilemma. And the acceptance dilemma is where, you recognize, okay, for instance, and there's this individual I know who thinks much more positively about her life now. And she recognized that, nice to see you too, Claudia. It's great to see you. Thank you. She recognized that her fears, her past fears, due to the outcomes that she has had with past relationships and the way she thinks about things, have been affecting the outcome she has been getting in life, that she has not been successful in finding the partner that she wishes, because it's impacting her thinking because of her past. And the acceptance dilemma is, you recognize that this is the problem, but on the other hand, you have to find that willpower to overcome it. And that's a dilemma. The dilemma is recognizing the problem and finding the willpower to overcome it, where you have to push through your own defense mechanisms, where you have to push through your own fears, push through your own past, you know. And part of that acceptance means that, hey, it's time for me to accept that my past is my past. It's time for me to forgive. So part of that acceptance is where it's time for healing. I need to forgive. I need to let go so that I can move on. So you go through that aspiration for change, and then changing is where we actually, the change process I talk about, I'm trying to recall, thinking positive on purpose. Now, there are some people you will find on the internet that will talk about, oh, positivity mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, a lot of people say that.
My point is, how would you feel if you would make a decision, and I will ask your viewers that today, if you were to make a decision starting today, okay, or tomorrow morning, it's afternoon here in the UK, you wake up tomorrow morning, and today I'm not going to say anything positive, I'm just going to be negative. How would you feel by the end of the day? I bet you might be sick. You might have a tummy ache. You might have a headache. You'll feel disgusted. You might literally feel like there are, I know, bugs all over your body, because negativity attracts negativity. You may have a confrontation with someone. So my whole point is, no, it's not the positivity mumbo jumbo. It's a decision. It's making the decision to think positive on purpose. Now, here's the difference. Thinking positive on purpose doesn't mean that, let's use this example, that you have a problem to solve. Let's say someone is unemployed. This is the issue to solve in your life. Thinking positive on purpose doesn't mean that this issue does no longer exist. It's not a matter of being unrealistic. It's making a decision that the way I'm going to think about this problem, I'm going to think about it in a positive light so that I can achieve the outcome that I want to achieve in my life. And that's why it's making a decision to think positively on purpose. For instance, you may be working in an environment that's a negative environment, and you're making a decision to think positive on purpose so that you can maintain a clear mind, you could maintain focus, you could enjoy your day, and not allow that to sap your energy and to really give you a bad day. So part of the change process is thinking positive on purpose. Part of the change process, and I have a chapter on it called taking authority over your words. And this is something I believe in strongly, Kadia, because I have seen it in my life. Now, some people may call it the law of attraction. Some may call it God working in mysterious ways. But I have seen in my personal life, and I can give numerous examples, where I have said, even with starting with 12 years old, when I use that example, of things that I have said, and I would repeat it to myself, and I would believe it, and it has come to pass. You have to take authority over your words, because your words are life. And you know, there's a proverb that death and life is in the power of the tongue. Choose life. You will have what you choose. So you choose, you make that decision to take authority over your words. Let me know if I've passed the time. Okay. You make that decision.
You got lost there for a second.
Yes, you make that decision to choose authority, to choose, have authority over the words that you speak. so that you will get the outcomes that you will get. And it will help you by using the right words. It will help you to maintain the positive mindset that you need to maintain so you can achieve your goals in life. Another thing that we sometimes do as part of the change process is redefining ourselves. So I talk about being able to redefine yourself. And part of redefining yourself is getting to know yourself better. And a lot of individuals need to reach that point. You know, Maslow talk about it as the hierarchy, where with self-actualization, where we need to get to know ourselves better. Well, you recognize what your limiting beliefs are. You recognize how we because sometimes we self-sabotage ourselves. And we self-sabotage ourselves. As a simple example, perfectionism is one way we self-sabotage ourselves. And because we're perfectionists, we've never finished that book, or we've never finished that training program, or we've never completed something that we're working on, or we've never started the project we want to start, because we are perfectionists and we self-sabotage ourselves. So part of the change process is part of redefining yourself, recognizing those things that you need to change, the way that you need to be the things that you need to believe, to let go of all those disempowering beliefs that we may have. And those disempowering beliefs, it really takes a sincere determination to break those beliefs, because those beliefs have been reinforced throughout our childhood as we were growing up. So those beliefs you have about yourself, oh, you know, I can never succeed, or I can never find a good man. You know, you hear people saying that. It's a belief that we're putting in our mind. Or I'll always be single. We need to break those negative beliefs, break those disempowering beliefs. So part of redefining ourselves is part of letting go of that way of thinking and that way of believing, and making that choice to believe for a better outcome in your life.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mel. I mean,
You're
that's
welcome.
so much information. One of the things I just wanted to add is we also have to be mindful of the persons we surround ourselves with, our circles, because
Right.
they too can also contribute to whether or not, you know, we think negatively or positively. Because like you say, words are powerful. And if you have somebody in your circle who's always negative, always brings you down, you know, just puts you in that kind of a gloomy mood, and you know, just drains you,
Yeah.
it definitely can have make a big impression on your life and impact you in a way that sometimes we don't even realize or see. So I think it's also important that our viewers also take note of the circle and the people that we surround ourselves with.
Excellent,
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah, yeah. So I struggle with it as just like anybody else in terms of the negative thoughts, and I know a lot of persons out there also struggle with it on a daily basis. You know, we like to throw pity parties for ourselves, where we always,
Yeah.
you know, want to bring ourselves down and you know, talk negatively to ourselves. But what you shared with us today, not just, you know, what's in the book, and but your experiences are, as well, are very powerful, Melissa. And I am so happy that, you know, you came on this morning to just, you know, share light and no positivity, especially during a time like that, like this right now, with the
Yes.
pandemic that we're all going through, you know, and faced with. So thank you so much. Your contributions will, I am sure, to our viewers, well received. I can see the comments from our persons here. So
Yes.
nice discussion, interesting discussion. You know, thumbs up. Somebody said need to remember this. You know, so I am sure that whatever they took from this discussion this morning was definitely something, I'm sure at least they can take one part of it, if implemented in their life, will make their lives better. So thank you
Yes.
so much again.